going to succeed in the decades ahead if, and only if, we source enough energy. Energy that's homegrown, clean, and cheap. If we get this right, the British people will enjoy greater prosperity in the decades ahead. If we don't, we lose jobs and investment and our path to a greener future. I first want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Grant Shapps, who was relentless in making the case for energy security. He rightly said that we cannot be at the mercy of tyrants like Vladimir Putin, who seek to weaponize oil and gas against us. Our best defense is ensuring our own energy independence. And that energy independence is exactly what the Conservatives are delivering. We don't just have the world's largest offshore wind farm, we have the second largest and the third, and yes, we have the fourth and imminently the fifth largest too, all built under our watch. We're investing in solar, in fusion, and in hydrogen. And rather than relying on imports, as Keir Starmer would have it, we're backing our own North Sea. And we're delivering the first large-scale nuclear project since Margaret Thatcher's government. In fact, each and every operational nuclear power plant in Britain began its life under a Conservative government. And we've done this all whilst meeting our climate change ambitions and growing the economy. Over the last 30 years, we've cut our emissions by half. We now get close to half of our power from renewables, up from just 7% when Labour left office. Let's never forget, Ed Miliband described the idea of the UK getting to 40% renewables as pie in the sky. It is this Conservative Party delivering for our people and our environment. Our leadership is also bringing wealth to our economy and to British workers. Since 2010, we've secured £200 billion in low-carbon investments, with up to £375 billion on the way. Carbon capture will see 50,000 high-skilled British jobs in places like Teesside and the Humber. Our world-leading offshore wind farms will see 100,000 jobs by 2030 from Aberdeen to Cornwall. And our pioneering hydrogen industry is bringing jobs right here in the northwest of England and over the border in North Wales. And conference, we're not just creating energy, we're saving energy too. When Labour left power, less than 12% of homes were considered energy efficient. Now, that figure is 50%. It is we Conservatives who are delivering the practical solutions to ensure we have secure, cheap energy, reducing bills and protecting the environment. Yet despite our success, we need to be honest about the challenges ahead. The transition to clean energy should be a cause of optimism for the country. It should mean jobs and opportunities and pride that we are playing our part in a global challenge. However, for too many people, it had started to feel like an intolerable cost at a time when, after the last few years, they felt they could least afford it. Across Europe, we are seeing the consequences when the public feel that they are being forced into the wrong decisions for their homes and their families. In Germany, the climate skeptic AfD is now polling in second position in Europe's largest economy. In France, over a quarter of people think that climate change is a conspiracy. And in the Netherlands, the rise of a new net zero skeptic party stormed their local elections. Meanwhile, in the UK, only 7% of people think net zero is going to be good for them and their family in the near term. Uxbridge showed us what happens when you tax people for using their cars without thinking about how they would be able to get around otherwise. Conference. I've worked with families running on a tight budget. I know the difference £12.50 Labour's ULEZ tax can make to people whose finances are stretched. If we are to succeed, net zero can't be something that's done to people by a privileged elite. We cannot force people to make the wrong decisions for their families, and it's immoral to put forward policies that will impoverish people here when emissions are rising abroad. Conference, Labour are the party of tax and condemn. We Conservatives are the party of aspiration and the environment. And we should be clear. In the UK, we account for 1% of global emissions. Whilst we've reduced rapidly, other countries are polluting more. Their emissions are rising, and rising fast. In China, emissions are up over 300%. We will play our part, and we will support other countries to do more, but we can't do that off the backs of struggling households here at home. However, the likes of Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, funded by the same people who fund Labour, do not get it. For them, net zero has become a religion. For us, it's a practical mission to be achieved. They want to force people to behave a certain way or face punitive taxes. And more than that, they show sheer condescension about people's normal way of life. Do you eat meat? How dare you? You're flying away for a week in the sun? How selfish. You're driving to work to put food on the table for your family? Well, you should have chosen a different job. It is these zealots that would see the cause of climate change lost. They are more concerned with signalling their own purity than with energizing the cause of climate change. They don't seek to persuade, only to disrupt. They don't want to engage, only to silence. Conference, that is the Labour Party for you. And what do we see? It's no wonder that Labour seems so relaxed about taxing meat. Keir Starmer doesn't eat it, and Ed Miliband is clearly scarred by his skirmish with a bacon sandwich. Conference, Keir Starmer's only green credential is his recycling of Ed Miliband. A man who has already been binned off once before the great British public, a man who's working in lockstep with Just Stop Oil, and a man who's clearly radicalised Keir Starmer. Labour's hated ULEZ expansion. Their plans to borrow £28 billion a year, which would drive up inflation, to take us much further and faster than any other country, no matter the cost to ordinary people. Their plans are toxic and would collapse popular support for net zero. Simply put, it is not the climate change deniers who threaten net zero. It is Keir Starmer's Labour Party. They choose ideology over reason at every turn. Alongside the SNP, the Labour Party opposed further development of the North Sea, a plan that would export 200,000 oil and gas jobs abroad, a plan that's been rightly condemned by the unions. Even our climate change watchdog says that when we reach net zero in 2050, we'll still need oil and gas as part of our energy consumption. Yet Labour would shut down the North Sea. They'd have us more dependent on foreign regimes for longer. Jobs lost, investment lost, and our national security jeopardised. Well, we Conservatives are going to do things differently. The UK can benefit and is benefiting from jobs and investment that the energy transition brings. From climate finance to generating new technology, we have a leading role that will see us beat climate change. But conference will also ensure that we take our own people with us. Indeed, that's the only way that we can achieve this. That's why we've made sensible adjustments to take a new approach to climate policies. Of all the major economies, we've set the toughest targets and we've exceeded all of them. We're raising our ambitions on clean energy and innovation, but we're making it financially easier for people to change their boilers. And crucially, this will be by choice, not coercion. Gone are bans for those in rural communities for whom there is no realistic alternative for their boiler. And for those who can convert, we're increasing the grant for cleaner heating to one of the most generous schemes in Europe. We're also moving to a phase out of petrol and diesel engines, which is in line with France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Canada, and California. Our carbon emissions will continue to fall, but people will be able to make the transition when the price is right for them. We've taken these bold decisions because they are the right ones for our people. We will be ambitious, but we can also be practical, and above all, we must be compassionate. It's we Conservatives who will deliver both for our people today and for generations to come. This is a decades-long endeavour, and we are in it for the long haul. As part of this long-term strategy, one that focuses on energy security, lower bills, and decarbonisation, I'm today announcing the next phase of our new practical approach. Firstly, we are boosting our long-term resilience and will set out our nuclear roadmap this autumn. A crucial element of this will be how we deploy the exciting new technology of small modular nuclear reactors. I'm therefore pleased to announce today the 6 companies we have shortlisted to build these reactors. Rolls-Royce, an iconic British company who've been powering our nuclear submarines for 70 years, a company founded by the genius of our Union of Nations, formed by the Welshman Charles Rolls and the English apprentice Henry Royce, who formed a partnership right here in the Midland Hotel in Manchester 120 years ago. They've been selected alongside 5 other world-leading companies, each with cutting-edge technology, including GE Hitachi, EDF, Holtec, NewScale, and Westinghouse, with the final decision to be taken early next year. Together with Hinkley, Sizewell, and our commitment to accelerate other emerging technologies and bring them to market, it's we Conservatives who are acting now to secure our future. Now, our quest to tackle climate change means taking people with us. We know that many are hesitant, for example, about solar farms covering our countryside. Conserving our green and pleasant land is a personal priority for me, from the Surrey Hills to the Derbyshire Dales. We're therefore working to reduce pressure on rural communities by making it easier for solar panels to be installed on industrial rooftops, warehouses, car parks, and factories. We'll cut through the planning red tape that limits the amount of solar businesses can currently install. Protecting the countryside, boosting renewables, and according to industry, saving businesses up to £3 billion a year. And finally, maintaining public support for net zero also means showing compassion. Rather than clobbering the public and forcing them to make the wrong choices for their families, this government is supporting people as we reduce emissions. That's why my last announcement is targeted at those least able to make the transition. So today I can announce we're allocating a further £80 million to insulate thousands of social homes, saving families on average £240 each year, supporting the most vulnerable, reducing their bills, protecting our environment. Today's announcements taken together, new nuclear, sensible solar, insulation investment, it's the Conservatives with the practical long-term solutions for our country. And the contrast with Labour could not be starker. Their approach concerns me because it risks public support in the very endeavour they claim to champion. And it also imperils our mission as Conservatives. I'm a Conservative because I believe that we are custodians of the things that we cherish. We must deliver abundant, cheap energy so that the next generation can benefit like we did. We must preserve and protect the environment for those yet to be born. Since Mrs. Thatcher stood up at the United Nations in 1989, it's been this country that's reduced emissions faster than any of our competitors. I believe that if we place ourselves at the forefront of the latest energy revolution, we'll reap the rewards just as we did in the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago. We will be ambitious, we will be innovative, and we will be pragmatic. These are, after all, the attributes that the world associates with Britain. So let's take the fight to short-term Starmer. Let's not allow Labour to play politics with our energy security, for it's only the Conservatives who can save our environment, grow our economy, and secure our children's future. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of State for Transport, Mark Harper.
Conference, thank you. It's great to be with you in Manchester, and as Transport Secretary, I'm supported by a great ministerial team who join us today. Jessie Norman, Hugh Merriman, Richard Holden, and Charlotte Veer. I'm proud to lead a team working every day to keep Britain moving forward. I'd also like to welcome two special guests. Our newest Member of Parliament, Steve Tuckwell, Uxbridge's Steve Tuckwell. Steve's campaign to stop Labour inspired us all. And also joining us, Susan Hall, the Conservative candidate for Mayor of London, the only person who can defeat Sadiq Khan, cancel his ULEZ expansion and turn London blue again. Susan, you're very welcome. Now, when we arrived in the department last October, we faced industrial action across our railways. By March, we'd resolved the dispute at Network Rail, meaning the rail infrastructure is always available, crucial for moving freight. But the union barons at the RMT and ASLEF have since refused to let their members on train operators have a say on the fare offers on the table. They don't care how many thousands of pounds their members lose in pay, as long as Mick Whelan still sits on Labour's National Executive Committee, pulling Sir Keir's strings. That's why Labour refused to criticise the continued industrial action, which achieves nothing but disrupting hard-working businesses and people who just want to get on. They take money from the pockets of ordinary people who could never dream of a train driver's wage. The union barons seek to inconvenience people, but all they do is risk resentment towards rail workers, and they put their own industry at risk. Now, make no mistake, Conference, I'm proud of what we Conservatives have done to support our railways. We've invested over £100 billion to transform services, with millions of passengers across the country travelling on new trains on upgraded tracks. In 13 years, Labour electrified just 63 miles of railway track. We've delivered over 1,200 miles. The choice is clear: Labour-backed strikes or Conservative investment. Either we make the hard but necessary long-term decisions to get a financially sustainable modern railway, or we follow Labour's lazy, ideological approach, forking out yet more money from the public purse for no benefit to passengers. Now, conference, for people in my rural constituency and indeed across our country, buses are the backbone of public transport, and this Conservative government is backing our buses. We have invested over £3.5 billion in our bus network since March 2020, including over £1 billion to help local areas make bus services more frequent, more reliable, better coordinated and cheaper. The evidence is clear. In Labour-run Wales and London, bus fares increased last year. In Scotland, the SNP put them up. But in England, outside London, thanks to our Conservative fare cap, bus fares actually went down, helping with the cost of living. Now, in the maritime sector, which carries 95% of UK goods, we're investing to guarantee its sustainable future. In aviation, with our Jet Zero, we're ensuring we can cut pollution while still growing our economy and helping people go on well-deserved holidays, with the Prime Minister's clear commitment last month to no new punitive taxes that discourage people from flying. But conference, for most people, the most important mode of transport remains the car, the van, the lorry or the motorbike. Now, from listening to certain corners of the metropolitan bubble, you would think owning a car was immoral, a dirty habit, an optional extra in people's lives. Politicians like Sir Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan and Mark Drakeford are only interested in the short term, taking the easy way out and making decisions that hammer motorists to seek praise from the social media and London newspapers. It's the Conservative Party which is proudly pro-car. We are on track to a future where zero-emission vehicles powered by batteries, hydrogen or other clean technologies mean we keep driving, but powered in a way that's fit for the future. And this Conservative government will make the hard but necessary long-term decisions to get the country on the right path for the future, even if some people don't like it. What a contrast with Labour. In London, Sadiq Khan's ULEZ expansion is a Labour tax on the poorest drivers. And conference, he wants to go further. His pricing would see every driver pay per mile driven, no matter how clean their car is. And in Labour-run Wales, Sir Keir Starmer's blueprint for Labour, there are blanket 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, an ideological ban on road building, and plans to charge people to drive on the M4. And just last week, they let slip their plans for road charging across Wales. And it isn't just in Wales or in London. Right across our country, there is a Labour-backed movement to make cars harder to use, to make driving more expensive, and to remove your freedom to get from A to B how you want. Conference, it's time for Conservatives to act. And today I'm proud to announce a comprehensive plan to back drivers. First of all, I'm calling time on the misuse of so-called 15-minute cities. Now, there's nothing wrong with making sure people can walk or cycle to the shops or school. That's traditional town planning. But what is different, what is sinister, and what we shouldn't tolerate is the idea that local councils can decide how often you go to the shops and that they ration who uses the roads and when, and they police it all with CCTV. So today, I am announcing that the government will investigate what options we have in our toolbox to restrict overzealous use of traffic management measures, including cutting off councils from the DVLA database if they don't follow the rules. The Prime Minister has already tasked me to conduct a review into low traffic neighbourhoods, and that's ongoing, building on my decision to ensure no government money funds them. It can't be right that these schemes are imposed without proper local consent. So we will change the guidance to ensure that councils properly listen to what local people say. But conference will go further. 20-mile-an-hour zones are a good way to protect schools for quiet residential streets or areas that are becoming rat runs. But for some councils, and indeed for some countries, they're yet another way to punish drivers as blanket measures. The evidence is clear. This makes little difference, may actually increase pollution, and risks motorists ignoring 20-mile-an-hour zones where they are needed. So we will change the Department for Transport's guidance requiring councils to only use 20-mile-an-hour zones where there's a good reason, and underlining that 30 miles per hour is the default speed limit on urban roads. It's also time to put a stop to some councils using unfair fines as a money spinner. We'll put a stop to councils profiting from traffic offences, clawing back revenue and removing any temptation to exploit you for profit. And at the same time, we'll make it easier for people to switch to cleaner driving in a sensible way, as the Prime Minister set out recently. There's much more. We'll make it easier and cheaper to drive and ride, to park and to use transport sensibly. To cut down on jams, we'll tune up traffic lights to help junctions flow and restrict 24-hour bus lanes where they aren't appropriate. And our plan includes a new national parking platform, ending the need to install numerous apps just to park your car, as well as a comprehensive package of measures to help councils tackle the menace of potholes. Now, conference 36 years ago, Margaret Thatcher inspired a working-class boy from Swindon to join the Conservative Party. And a year later, she told us how we have a full repairing lease on our country and on our environment. And since 2010, Conservatives in government have worked to deliver her vision. That working-class boy from Swindon was me, and I make no apology for working to make our transport fit for the future, playing my part in delivering her legacy. Conference, as a Conservative, I want to give people choice to make their lives easier, not to force them to travel in a certain way or at a certain time. We can make it easier and more convenient for people to use cleaner cars, but forcing no one to give up the cars they have today. We can make it safer for people to choose to walk or cycle, but without forcing drivers off the roads. And we can cut our carbon emissions without taxing poorer motorists off the road or without CCTV enforced council rationing. Conference, we're at a fork in the road. Labour will continue with their same failed approach, taxing the poorest motorists, political speed limits, banning road building. Labour would put Just Stop Oil in the driving seat. They'd fix a camera on every lamppost, put a hand in every pocket. Instead, we stand for freedom to travel how you want, a sensible approach to protecting our environment. We stand for making the hard but necessary long-term decisions to get the country on the right path for the future. The choice is clear. We've got a long-term plan to back drivers. Labour has a long-term plan to tax drivers. We're on the side of hard-working people. Labour wants to drive them off the roads altogether. We will take the difficult decisions to put our country on the road to the future. Labour will condemn us to the slow lane. That is why I back Susan Hall in London, Andy Street in the West Midlands, Ben Houchen in the Tees Valley, and our fantastic Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to lead us into the next election and to win. Conference, thank you very much indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, Lucy Frazer.
Conference, it's fantastic to be with you here today in Manchester, the home of Media City, Oasis, the Stone Roses, Take That, United and City. Manchester is one of our capitals of culture. I say that as a proud northerner, albeit from Leeds. Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, Liverpool. These cities have so much culture, creativity, and potential. Today, I want to talk to you about the huge potential of our cultural and creative industries and how this potential has been harnessed by Conservative government after Conservative government. And I want to talk to you about how we can and will continue to maximise this potential in the years to come. And for me, believing in the power of potential, believing in our country, in our people, in our industries, that's why I'm a Conservative. And just to illustrate that, I wanted to begin with a story of a brilliant woman called Yetta, who understood the importance of potential and maximising it. Her parents were Russian, and they came to this country as refugees fleeing persecution. And despite many drawbacks of that age, being Jewish, the daughter of immigrants, and a woman, she succeeded. Yetta ignored obstacles and focused instead on the opportunity she had been given to be brought up here in the UK and in her very own extensive potential. She became the first female barrister in Leicester and practiced at the bar until she was 80. Yetta was my grandmother, and on every visit, she reminded me of a line from a Robert Browning poem. A man's reach should exceed its grasp, or what's a heaven for? It's a line about believing in our ability to succeed, not just settling for the status quo, about maximising opportunity and potential, which summed up her life. And like her, I want to maximise the potential of all those sectors that I represent. Right now, we are in a golden age for British culture. We unambiguously dominate in all forms of our creative industries globally. In television, UK programmes are being exported across the world. We've had 74 British Oscar winners since 2010. Musically, Adele, Ed Sheeran, and Harry Styles continue to dominate the global charts. Last month, an executive at Warner Brothers told me that when he meets others from the industry abroad, they say, "How do we be more like the UK?" Football is a major global export. I challenge any of you in this room to tell me that on your holidays abroad, you haven't met a waiter, a taxi driver, or a tourist on a beach who hasn't shared their support for an English team. And it's not always United. Last holiday, I met someone who supported Grimsby Town. Conference, this success is no accident. It's the result of the hard work and ingenuity of our creative industries and the talent of many impressive individuals. It's also the result of consecutive Conservative governments who have recognised this potential. Since 2012, we have supported the success of these industries with tax reliefs across the board, from film to animation to video games to theatre. These tax reliefs have helped to attract significant global investment into the UK. And when times were really hard, we stepped up. During COVID, a cultural recovery fund, £1.57 billion, which supported nearly 220,000 jobs and 5,000 organisations and protected our cultural heritage and creative industries. Our Film and TV Restart Scheme supported over 1,000 productions, over 100,000 roles for cast and crew, and over £3 billion of production expenditure. we know that this cumulative support has driven success. High-end television saw a total production spend in the UK of £4.3 billion in 2022, up from just £390 million in 2013, the year the tax relief was introduced. That's a tenfold increase. Jobs that would not have been filled, stories not told, creativity taken elsewhere without that Conservative support. But Conference, we can't rest on our laurels. Our mission as a government is to grow the economy, creating better jobs and opportunity right across the country. We are making the necessary long-term decisions to get the country on the right path for the future. The creative industries are one of the 5 high-growth tax sectors that we're targeting. And we have set lofty ambitions. Growing the creative industries by an extra £50 billion, creating 1 million extra jobs all over the country, and delivering a creative careers promise that builds a pipeline of talent, all by 2030. And we have a plan to deliver this. The Creative Industries Sector Vision, published in June, backed by an initial £77 million of funding, which we expect to bring in £250 million of private investment, with further support coming down the track. And we will ensure that young people who want a career in the creative or cultural industries can develop the necessary skills. And Conference, this simply would not have happened under Labour. They are always focused on the short term. They talk the talk, but they never deliver. They talk about supporting creativity, but let's look at their actions when they've actually had an opportunity to deliver. They talk about growth, but Labour voted against the introduction of every single one of our creative industries tax reliefs. They talk about creativity in education, but it was a Labour Education Secretary, David Blunkett, who slimmed down the statutory curriculum for creative education and told teachers to teach fewer arts subjects. Today, we only need to look to Wales to see what would happen if Keir Starmer got into power. Cutting spending to the arts despite receiving the largest settlement from the UK government in the history of devolution. Conference, for me, ensuring that we maximise the potential of our creative industries is critical, because this is maximising our opportunities for the future. Creativity in our schools, jobs for everyone, culture in our towns and cities. But whilst our potential is important, so is our past, our history, our culture, and our heritage. In recent years, the very essence of our history and the values that attach to this have come under threat. There are some that want to cancel, those who seek to erase our history, shut down a view they disagree with rather than argue against it, those who would apply a two-dimensional filter of moralist outrage on actions or statements rather than understanding the nuance of language or the context of history. These people cast Churchill as villain, not as the man who kept Britain free. Unlike some of those in the Labour Party, I am not ashamed of our great country's culture, its people, or its past. I do not want to bring down our statues or our monuments. I believe in the British people. What some call culture wars, I say, is standing up for our principles: pride, tolerance, understanding, learning, respect, fairness, and common sense. That's why the sports strategy we published in July sets out a common sense approach to trans inclusion in women's sport, protecting women and the integrity of women's sport with fairness at its core. That's why this week I wrote about my opposition to publishers sanitising books for not erasing our history. And it's why I will shortly be publishing new guidance on retain and explain for statues, so that rather than tearing down our history, we can understand it. Conference, I believe that we are lucky to live in the greatest country in the world, a country rich in history, where those within it have an innate and unlimited potential. It is our job in government to harness that, and we have, and we will continue to do so, because it is only through belief in our country, pride in our people, optimism for what lies ahead, that we can deliver a better future for our children. Conference, I believe that the best is yet to come. Because as Jetta would have said, what's a heaven for? Thank you.